benefits or better security. I think in the current condition with the financial situation, to me, it doesn't apply anymore. It's just the conditions have changed or evolved. And unfortunately, it creates more ambiguity and more stress in the market.
That's a great approach. Better than sending in tech bros who just like to slash and call themselves big balls and stuff like that. Who can take that seriously? Tell each of the agencies, balance your budget. You know, where I work, everybody was told, here's your budget, and you got to balance it. And if you can't balance it, you got to lay people off. And almost every single department last year or the year before, they had offered early retirements. That's how they approached it. But they live within their budget. And I can say, I don't think this is confidential, information that I'm precluded from saying publicly. I'm convinced that my previous boss, who hasn't been around for a number of years, and he was a nice guy and everything, I think the reason he retired, in quotation marks, was because he couldn't balance his budget. And I know that his successor is very, very cautious to do so. So if you put it on the individual departments and you say to the head of every department, you've got to balance your budget, I think you have a degree of accountability that we do not have here, but that you do find in the private sector. Does that pretty adequately reflect your argument?
Yes, it does, Gary. It does. And I just put in chat, too, just a link to this book that's not that expensive, but it's a real interesting overview and analysis looking at the financial situation that is impacting really everyone right now. So, yes, I would agree with your sentiment there, Gary. Thanks.
Thank you. And also to the issue of Congress getting paid, if they got paid on a per diem, they would show up for work. Brian, followed by Z. Brian.
Hey, Gary. I don't know if that book has accurate information that Howard's talking about, because a federal agency can't be in the red. They can't spend more money than Congress gives them. They can't borrow. I mean, there's been times that the agencies had to go without things because like when Congress cuts the IRS budget, for instance, there's things that they can't do because they don't have that money there. You can't just spend more than what Congress gives you. So I don't know how a federal agency could be in the red.
And Brian, conceptually you're correct, but I would encourage you, just look at it or look at some of the agency reports. They do produce a report where they are showing the net benefit that they're adding based on their expenditures and based on their perceived revenues or allocations that they're getting from Congress. It's all there.
I mean, Congress probably borrows the money to give to the agencies, but the agency can't spend more than what they're allotted. I'll have to take a look at it, but that's not how it works. But to the question, I think the employees should get paid for a couple of reasons. The first one being that, as you said in your opening statement, they are being used as pawns. And I think that's a bit different than if the company has, hard times or shuts down or decides that, for instance, if they came in and said we need less government employees, you get laid off. Okay, then you're laid off. This is a different case. You're being used as a pawn. You're being told, well, don't come into work until the government opens and you can come back into work. I mean, I don't think that's right. So that's the first reason. But the second reason and the main reason is that it actually is law that federal employees get paid. It's the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019 that was passed that said that for employees get paid in case of a government shutdown. Now, I think what they were trying to do today is, like you were saying, is pay federal employees that are actually going into their post of duty and working. And I thought about that one. At first, I was kind of on the fence on that one, because I'm like, well, if they get paid, then how are the other ones going to get paid? But when you consider, when you consider that the employee,
Ryan, we lost your signal. Loss of signal.
Can you hear me?
Unfortunately, you're on the dark side of the moon. I'm going to have to temporarily mute you. I don't know if you hear me, Brian, but your signal depreciated. Please try to resolve it. Okay, I'm going to invite you back up, see if it's been resolved. Well, he's not making the trip back up. Z followed by Madison. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, Z. Brian, try one more time here. Let's give him a chance. Brian?
So somebody said they could hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Where was I when you heard? I said that there was the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019 so it's law that when employees are
right, and then you were going into what they were trying to do today.
So what I was thinking about there is that that is probably a good idea to pay the employees that are actually going into the office, because they're going to have the added expense of the commuting and then the actual going into office and eating and and that type of thing, the expenses that come along with going into the office. So, but I'm still a little bit torn though, because if they do all of these workarounds, it does kind of take away the urgency of opening up the government. Then also you kind of wonder, where is this money coming from that they continue to find and put toward these projects? But that's what I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. And Z, thank you for your consideration, followed by Madison. Z.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Thanks, guys. Well, I thought this was pretty simple, that it's like, well, should they be paid? I said yes to myself, but I think the country's also financially bankrupt. I just wish that people in the White House would sit down someplace in a chair and open that book and just have a straight talk with people about just how bad in debt we might be and what to do about that, instead of just doing stuff, like whatever that means. But anyhow, I think that that I don't exactly know what to think, except these workers were kind of promised something by at least one law that somebody else talked about, and that moving forward, if people are going to change employee benefits or employee, that you're going to have a paycheck or whatever, then maybe moving forward you change that for people coming in, but just keep all the other people. If somebody isn't needed because there's been too many workers, like bloating a department, or I do have in real life, a friend of mine works to help farmers, and it's part of a government agency program. And they had the big meeting. A couple of her colleagues were let go. They kept her on, but they're changing the direction of this program, is the exact words that she said to me. And she is not happy about whatever this change in direction is. She's not at all happy about it. But she is being paid. But two people who worked there for 4 years were let go. So that happens. And then since this is part of, should workers be paid? I think that, Gary, you already said it, like air traffic controllers and military people and parks and so. I honestly don't think that the government should have been shut down. I think it was just retaliation and a punishment. That's what I honestly believe, and that it really should not have happened. And there are more professional adult ways to behave if you need to trim the fat or whatever. And if you have to make harsh realities, at least have one of the fireside chats with the whole country and say, hey, guess where we are? Let's put the cards on the table. But that's not what I hear or see. Also, because the country's in so much trouble financially, I was going to talk about some medical bills and ways that people are being forced to see doctors copious amounts of time so that bunches of people can get paid, even though it's just a total waste. I live in Massachusetts. I can only speak for here. So this is part of it. There's in order to go see the doctor you want, you got to pay. There's a whole bunch of people in line to get paid if the government is footing the bill. I don't know what it's like for people where the government isn't footing most or part of the bill, but I think that is horrible. And I said it out loud today to somebody, and, people can agree, but how do we change these things? How do we change? It's kind of like the same thing as how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? And how come the light bulb is $5,000? I can do both of that. I can buy a light bulb and screw it in. It's not that hard. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. See, we'll go to Madison, followed by Tiger.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for the room. I really appreciated what Howard had to say. And Gary, you said earlier, the only thing that I really was coming up here to say was definitely Congress shouldn't be paid. Nobody else should be paid. But I'm a believer in consequences. Like, I can show you better than I can tell you. And so if you just pay everybody, government runs as usual, then there are no consequences for the shutdown. And I think the Democrats should have let the health care bill pass, because if Republicans are so determined to make it unaffordable health care, let them. Let their own voters feel the sting of what they've been cheering for. So this is going to require some pain, and pain to all of us. So if you're going to shut down the government, shut it down. The truth is that most of the people who will get hurt by this aren't living in blue states. They're rural, red counties, and they're the ones most dependent on the ACA and the Medicaid expansion. And cut that off, what happens? Those hospitals close. People have to drive an hour for an emergency room. Premiums then shoot through the roof for families that are barely getting by. And it's the same working class, older GOP voters that they love to call the backbone of America. They've been promising repeal and replace for years, but they've never had replacement, just the repeal. So I think they should get what they've been begging for. Let them own it. Let the pain hit home for everybody, all of us, because that's the only way people learn who's really fighting for them. So I don't think that they should save the GOP from this policy. They just stay calm, stay clear of it. We warned you. We tried to protect your coverage. They took it away. So when the bills come due, the hospital shut down, voters will remember. So don't block it. Let this thing pass. Keep the government open, and let the consequences speak louder than any of these campaigns that everybody's running. Let them do it.
It's funny you should mention that, not in a hilarious way, but kind of in a coincidental way, because I actually was thinking, had the Democrats voted the continuing resolution and then held the Republicans' feet to the fire on the health care, people would not be out of work, the government would be functioning, and now we would be having our discussion not about whether government employees ought to get paid, but whether people should continue to benefit from Obamacare or not. And I think that's a harder thing to defend against. Your decision not to vote for extending and maybe even improving Obamacare. And you make a very interesting and correct point. If you look at the charts, and I have, the people who are availing themselves of the Obamacare that the Republicans say is so horrific, they're in red states. I'm not saying that it's not happening in blue states, but the majority of them are in red states. People have some kind of, many people have some kind of a perception that our poverty in our nation is in our inner cities. And some of the railing against programs to help people who are impoverished, I believe, and I will say this as a white man, is racial in nature. But if you really look at the situation, as I mentioned yesterday, in regard to a completely different discussion, the most impoverished areas of our country are in rural America, not in our inner cities. The inner cities get the coverage because, well, the media are there. There's no media to cover what's going on in, as I pointed out yesterday, many of these Appalachian communities. Nobody knows what's going on. It's all flyover. And so I think we neglect a whole section of our country of people who we profess to care about, but we really don't provide the programs to help them. I really feel bad for the farmers right now, who, because of the tariffs, which may have, in the aggregate, positive outcomes for the country, they can't sell their soybeans and they can't sell their beef.
Candidate John, this is Critical Thinking with Gary Baumgarten, Scott Ken Jones.
I don't know.
Go to JohnForCongress.com, running in the 16th district in Illinois to unseat and defeat
to get a little coverage, whereas before
this is a 20-minute.
They've been ignored. This is all in rural America, and I think maybe Madison, if I were a Democrat, if I was a Democratic leadership, which of course I'm not, I might have taken the tack that you suggest. Vote for the resolution and hold the Republicans' feet to the fire and let the chips fall where they may. And I don't know why they didn't do that, but I think the country and probably their party would have come out of this looking a lot better than maybe they will be as this continues to egg on. Because as Scott just said, and Scott's a Democrat, maybe they're overplaying their hand today by not voting to pay the working essential federal employees. Maybe they're overplaying their hand, and maybe there's going to be a backlash to that. And if there is, I wouldn't be surprised, Madison. We now go to Tiger, followed by Les. Tiger.
Hey, Gary. Since you baited me into it, I just have to mention that I think the Israel impediment to the ceasefire is probably the...
Les, followed by Dominic.
Howdy.
I don't know what he thinks he gains by doing that. Well, go ahead, Les. You're up.
Yeah. Obviously off topic. One area where you really need to have continuity is in health, in science. You've got these experiments being run with white mice and animal experiments and stuff. And they're going to continue to eat and they're going to need to be housed and taken care of, regardless of what Congress decides that they want to take a little break. And you might have 10 years of experiments, and if the mice die, then you've just wasted the last 10 years. And some poor guy with cancer isn't going to get the cure he wants.
Wait a minute. Is that a hypothetical, or is this actually happening that there are animals that are being used for medical research who are unattended during the government shutdown?
Candidate Jones, 20
They have to be attended to, and
Gary
somebody's got to
Baumgarten,
pay for that.
Scott Kent Jones.
How do we know they're being attended to?
Well, that's a standard thing you do in biology is you have animal models.
No, I understand what the standard is, but how do we know that during the shutdown that there's somebody going into this, maybe locked building on a daily basis tending to the animals? How do we know that that's happening?
for example, this is probably their place they take care of animals.
This is Canada John running the 16th district to defeat and unseat Darren LaHood. This is called Critical Thinking Forum with Gary Baumgartner and Scott Kent Jones. Go to johnforcongress.com.
Taken care of in the universities. Yeah, that's true. But are all of them being, or are there government labs run by government employees? I don't know. I mean, I'm seriously asking the question.
Well, I do know that there's also work being done at the CDC. I know one person in particular that's working. And she's got, they've got lab samples that have to be checked every day and stuff like that. It's not just the kind of thing you just kind of put on hold and come back to. And that's a special case. I'm not saying that's true for all government employees, but that's a particular area that poor Gary's going to die of cancer because no one's going to come up with some treatment when he needs it. And, and so that's I think it's a concern. And you can't just willy-nilly, hire people and fire people and expect folks to.
Right. So since I raised the specter of this, I apologize for interrupting. But while you're talking, I'm on the HHS, the Health and Human Services website, and there are contingency staffing plans, which include the CDC. That protect work that continue to fund work necessary to protect human life or to protect property during a funding lapse. So the immediate response to urgent disease outbreaks, it says, and critical investigation needs, and maintaining laboratory functions. So I'm sorry if I interjected something into the conversation that gave people undue angst, because I know how folks tend to react when they hear that animals are not being properly attended. And so I was asking the question, I wasn't making a point, and so that's why I wanted to correct that right now. And folks, again, do not message the moderator, please, while he is moderating the room, because you will just pull him out of the conversation, and perhaps that's your intent, but it won't work with me, so you're wasting your time attempting that. Les, please continue, and I apologize.
No, that was great. That's exactly what I needed to know, and it's very reassuring. I do think there is a bigger problem that, of getting people in the field and, of healthcare, it's just kind of cruel the way they, fired all these people and then brought them back. It's just, as you know, well, as anybody that's worked knows, just to be fired for no particular good reason except your company somehow has been mismanaged or whatever. It's good you get brought. I guess it's good you get brought back later, but it's kind of a form of incompetence. There was this, what is it, the CW, I think it's called the CWR, which is how we keep track of how doctors know what diseases are going around. And they fired all those people, and then they did a whoopsie, and then, a few weeks later, they brought them back. That's a problem. We do have but I really appreciate what other people have been saying. I really appreciate someone bringing up the fact we do have a $38 trillion deficit. And one way to get people to pay attention, I suppose, is to, cut down the head count. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. I can tell you that in my business, both journalism in general and radio in particular. There ain't no coming back from the layoffs. And they're happening on a daily basis. And arguably, you, the public, suffer as a result. Bigly. Dominic, followed by candidate, and we will in 5 minutes be no longer inviting folks onto the stage. So if you want to do it, raise your hand now would be a good time. Dominic.
Hey, Gary. Happy Thursday, everyone. Okay, I'm thinking about how to make a contribution to the conversation. The idea, we'll speak to the question of the room. I'm kind of leaning towards the idea that no one should get paid during a government shutdown. I like the idea of the word ambiguous came up earlier, and I don't know who used it, but I liked hearing it because all the workarounds make the brinksmanship, which is sort of a theatrical way of presenting the government shutdown, is that it is a theatrical presentation of brinksmanship, that, we think there's a crisis, and so we have to act. But in the middle of it, there's all these workarounds. Essential workers, blah, blah, blah. Somebody said, is it the individual worker's responsibility to be prepared for government shutdowns? Of course it is, but just because it's their responsibility doesn't mean they're going to do it. The 2 points I wanted to make now they're coming to me. Government employment as a policy can either be income distribution, in other words, giving income of the country to those who the economy cannot employ. I'll just think of Roosevelt and the New Deal, and the work corps and building of dams and road work and arts and crafts. The whole New Deal concept, which was a proto-socialist answer to the failures of capitalism at the time. And if we look at the other expressions of that same kind of policy, we look at, say, Argentina or Greece, in which large pension back end, we call them in the government, we call these back end contracts. You can have a lot of employees and not pay them a lot, but 25 years from now, you're going to pay a big bill. And that kind of has always been kind of the government payroll scam that government has played on the populace. Because I can have people work for the government and still remain budget conscious. It brings down cultures, it brings down governments, as we saw in throughout the Western Hemisphere, Argentina, Brazil, Guatemala, all these governments which hired as a matter of income distribution government employees. The other idea is that there is actual work that government needs to do. Sanitation.
You're losing your modulation. Can you speak into the mic?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
A lot better.
A lot better. Okay, thank you. Other essential service, police. I was going to say school teachers, but so there is this theory of the case that is in conflict from a policy perspective, Gary, whether we are trying to employ just say like Boss Tweed, going back to the 1875, 1890s, all the way through 1930s, 40s, in which Boss Tweed used corruption in government to employ impoverished Irish people. Gave them jobs in city government. They became dominant in the police department and in local politics as a means of jettisoning that impoverished population into some kind of economic class. David Dinkins did it with the blacks in New York City when he was mayor. And these are righteous, or I like to use the term virtuous policy prescriptions. But when government no longer has the spigot to finance these policy prescriptions, crisis emerges. The more we're dependent on these apparatuses of hiring people in order to distribute income, it puts the whole society at risk. And that's kind of where I wanted to get to in terms of where the people should, theoretically, a government should not be so important that if it's not operating, it should matter that much. But we are so beyond that as in terms of governmental theory and practice that we are now addicted to government in our lives. And there's nothing we can do about it except go through the addiction. And, those who claim virtue as being, their shield in the conversation, it's very difficult to do business with them because they're the virtuous ones and everyone else is not. Anyway, that's all I got.
Do you see a retraction from this sometime in the future?
I don't think so, Gary. The next wave of impoverished immigrant is going to be the Spanish, who we led in mass migration. They will be the next, million cohort to take over the apparatuses of government, say in the next 15 to 20 years. And I don't see us getting out of that cycle. After that, after we absorb the Spanish mass migration, we may have an opportunity. But I think we're 25 years away. 25 years away from that.
Thank you, Dominic. We will no longer be inviting folks on the stage, but we will go into extra time to give everybody on the stage an opportunity to speak. And those on the stage are in this order: Candidate, Double, and Steve. Candidate.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me on your stage. Really enjoy your room. I like that you turn off the chat. I also went on YouTube and I typed in Gary Baumgarten. I saw your YouTube channel with all your recordings, and I did want to ask you a question about consistency and communication, but I do want to talk about this government shutdown. But I do also want to read a verse from the Tao Te Ching, which is the 75th verse, and the name of that chapter is called Who Can Enjoy the Treasures of Life? It talks about taxes. I'd just like to read it as a quick little snippet from the Tao Te Ching, if that's okay. It's the best value I can bring to the room. It says, why are the people so hungry? Because their grain is devoured by the rich in taxes. That is why the people are starving. Why are the people so rebellious? Because the government deprives them of their liberties and rights. That's why the people are rebellious. Why do the people not fear death? Because their lives are made so miserable that death seems no worse than life. Thus, no one enjoys the treasures of life, neither the rich who squander their humanity, nor the government which tyrannizes the people, nor the people who have nothing to gain from life. There's commentary on that, but that's the Tao Te Ching. I've been studying that extensively as I campaign to unseat and defeat Darren LaHood in the 16th District of Illinois. I'm a federal former employee of the IRS, the Treasury Department, and I spent 5 years there observing every employee under the sun, every business unit. I worked in facilities. I opened and closed offices. I interacted with the criminal tax investigators, the police of the IRS. I worked with the lawyers of the IRS and their big business and international business cases. I've seen it all in the IRS. That is a huge budget. If you look at the $38 trillion threshold that we just crossed in debt and the $1 trillion a year that we're paying, which is really about $100 billion a month now, it's not just an American problem with debt. It's a European problem. It's a Chinese problem. The whole world runs on central bank fiat currency. And so it's my opinion that you can use debt as a political tool to cause fear. But the truth is all debt can be resolved. It comes out in inflation. And the future congresspeople and senators of the United States of America are essentially going to have to work with international banks to resolve debt. And as someone who has a lot of debt and, I get a yield on that debt, not all debt is bad, but it's neither here nor there. There's a lot of employees in the U.S. federal government that are happy that they don't have to go to work right now, and they're going to get paid back. I used to be in the National Treasurer Employer Union, and if you get furloughed, you get back pay for the work that you didn't even do. The system is geared for the value of the employee. And the average federal employee is making $120,000 a year. They technically only work 9 months out of every year, 30 days for sick, 30 days for vacation, 30 days for holidays. So you literally make $120K at 9 months a year. That's a good job. And it's a career. You can count on it. The guy that hired me said, I've never seen an IRS employee get fired in my entire career, in my whole life. I've never heard of it. It doesn't happen. So I got fired. I stopped going to work. I couldn't keep opening and closing IRS offices, spending millions of dollars, knowing that we're $37 trillion in debt. And I'm opening and closing shakedown offices for young women and men who drive Ubers, who are just trying to feed their babies. And they got to go into an IRS taxpayer compliance office and get shaken down. It's a shakedown operation. The country is so far and broke. Why do we even tax ourselves when we just print the money and we keep borrowing from the Federal Reserve? So the system, in my opinion, we're just going to keep plugging holes. This is a sinking ship with a lot of leaks, but that's okay. The boat is still sailing, and it's come October 31st, you got to pull the boat out of the water. So the Democrats want to spend more than the Republicans, and the Republicans want to spend more than what they even say. This is all about borrowing and spending as much as possible. And, I align myself with Thomas Massey, who believes we should cut the federal budget, but 1% annually to start and go from there, because you don't run your life like this. Nobody runs a business like this. No real for-profit organization can run like this, except for our immortal United States government and the magic that it creates. So I'm optimistic. I hope everybody has a good night. Gary, I love your room. Scott Kent Jones, God bless you. Howard, God bless you. Thank you for donating to my campaign, Howard. And Alan, I also love you too. I like nice people. That's what it comes down to. I don't care what the problem is. If we can be nice and kind to each other, we will survive and find a solution, because it's all just artwork. You're $1, you're 10, you're 100, you're 50. That's a canvas. That's a piece of paper. But the social commitments that we have to each other, because it's not just 38 trillion in debt, it's 100 trillion in debt. All those unfunded liabilities and pensions that millions of federal workers got to get paid out on, and all these state municipal workers that got to get paid out on their pensions over the next 20 years. The whole system is completely upside down, but that's okay, because bankers and lawyers, it's all communication. We're not pulling out knives and daggers and M16A4s and rocket-propelled grenade launchers like we're living on the border of Ukraine. Our problems are communication problems. These financial debts, borrowing and spending and taxing will resolve. They'll have to resolve. Otherwise, then we will start fighting. But I think we can resolve it. Thank you, Gary. God bless you. Scott, God bless you. Alan, Howard, Double, Steve, God bless you all.
Howard, did you want to respond to his thanking you for contributing to his campaign?
No response necessary. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, so the average salary of a federal worker is $101,610. So you inflated that a bit. And the annual vacation leave is 13 days a year at less than 3 years of service, 20 days a year 3 to 15 years of service, sick leave 13 days a year, and 11 paid federal holidays. I don't know whether that adds up to the numbers that you proffered, but I don't think that they do. Thank you, candidate. Double, followed by Steve. Double.
Hi, Gary. It's good to be here with you. As much as I dislike the previous speaker, I have to say sometimes I do agree with.
But he loves you. He loves you.
And I wanted to.
I think you should return the love, babe.
Well, he did ask God to bless me, so I will return that and ask God to bless him as well. And I thank him for that. And Gary, one thing just I wanted to reflect back, going back a bit, is I was just surprised to hear you say or admit, even though it was a qualified thing, you were like, it might be possible that the tariffs are actually beneficial for the country in the aggregate.
I don't believe I said that, so I think that I'm appreciating the fact that you're giving me the opportunity to clarify, because apparently, once again, I did not properly use the English language and I was misinterpreted. I never said that. And in the context of what I discussed, I said, even if there are benefits, I didn't say Gary believes that there are benefits. And so I might think that, I don't know, because that's not what I said. So please do not misquote me.
No, that's fair. I didn't mean to misquote you. It was just maybe even hinting that it might be possible, I thought was, notable. But I didn't mean to misinterpret you. As far as this shutdown and people being paid, I really think this is a distraction. This is kind of what they want you to be talking about. They want people to get stirred up over, this is a big nothing burger. The previous speaker sort of hinted at the fact of, you're actually in the best position. It's the people who are working and not getting paid, which maybe you're specifically targeting at those people, but those are way the worse off people, although they're going to be fine as well. They're just slightly worse off than if we didn't have the government shutdown. And you could do the math on, okay, just how much, what is the present value calculation of a deferred payment or something? And I don't know if people get interest or not, but the interest on, a couple weeks or even a couple months of missed paychecks is not going to make the difference in somebody's life. What is going to make the difference in some of these federal workers' lives is, or those associated, knock-on contracts or whatever, is if then the president is empowered to cut their jobs permanently. And I think they're using strong language like with no possibility of rehire or something like this. That's what people really should be getting their knickers in a twist about, not, they're going to have a 2-month delayed payment and therefore they're missing out on 2%, net present value of those specific paychecks. It's just, let's be honest, if you took Finance 101, it's not a big deal. If we really have that many federal workers living on the brink of starvation and poverty and eviction, that, they're guaranteed for how many decades kind of job that at least they thought they had, that they didn't manage to save or maintain enough credit with their banks, who are now bending. I go to my bank now, Gary, I log in, and there's a giant banner at the top about, if you're a government worker affected by this, we have money for you. We're just going to throw money at you so we all feel good about ourselves. This is a situation.
No, you're not saying that so that we can all feel good about ourselves. You're not naive enough to believe.
I'm reading between the lines. You're right.
I don't think you. I don't think. Hold on. I don't think you're so naive as to believe that that the federal government I'm sorry, that the banks are doing this so that we can all feel good about ourselves. They're doing it because they want to sell money and gain on the interest, right?
Boom. Well, even you're making my next point, Gary. Thank you. Because America is one of the shining beacons on the hill of capitalism in this dark world that we live in. And, as such, we have, how much of our, it's actually, I looked up, even financial services is 7%, over 7.5%, which I think is almost criminal. But, that's for starters, is 7.5% of GDP is financial services. And I would say probably GDP wise, given, to the point of the last speaker about we're living on these fake Federal Reserve notes, but the U.S. actually is taxing the rest of the world through these notes. Like a good chunk of our GDP and our livelihoods, the cheapness with which we can access goods is actually because we're just issuing this funny money. Anyway, maybe I digress, but the point is, in this world of high finance, the idea that a government worker can't get a bridge loan for a couple months, from these profit-seeking, driven by the invisible hand, everyone following their selfish aims to give them money so they can pay the rent that month and keep the lights on and keep their kids fed and everything. I mean, it just beggars belief that this is actually a crisis, that the delayed paychecks is a crisis that we need to worry about. I've been let go from many jobs over my decades of career, and you know what? You go from having a paycheck to zero, and then you have to figure out what to do. It's like if the worst thing that's going to happen to you in your career is getting your paycheck delayed by a few weeks, it's like you're living pretty high on the hog, and I think we should all remember that when we think about the government shutdown. Anyway, I hope I made my point. Thank you so much for having me, Gary.
Thank you, Double. Steve, you get the last word.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a good move politically to put this on the table. As far as should we pay him? Well, I don't think it'd be a bad thing, but I'm not sure I know the laws well enough or the accounting well enough to really have a commentary on it one way or the other. So more than anything, I think it was just shrewd to put this on the table to say, hey, look, we want to pay them, but they won't. And this is kind of stuff that goes on in D.C. all the time. I'll leave it there, Gary.
Thank you, Steve. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. New York time. So until 5 p.m. New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. That's Critical Thinking Forum. Go to johnforcongress.com.